2 out of every 5 registered voters have already cast a ballot for Tuesday's Georgia Senate runoffs. The state has already surpassed its total vote record for a runoff. Gabriel Sterling, one of the state's top elections officials, revealed some of the data from early and mail-in voting. His numbers show heavily Democratic districts in the Atlanta and Columbus areas are at about 80% of general election turnout, as opposed to about 70% of the turnout in GOP strongholds in the northern part of the state. However, Sterling also notes Republicans got the bulk of their November turnout on Election Day, when they had a 60-38 advantage. Democratic candidates Jon Ossoff and Rev. Raphael Warnock are hoping their early vote advantage can stick and that the GOP does not see a surge tomorrow. But early data show several key groups for Democrats are lagging. For more on the Senate races, I want to bring in Julián Castro. He ran for president as a Democrat last year and most recently served as Secretary of Housing and Urban Development in the Obama administration. And he joins us now from San Antonio. Secretary Castro, welcome.
Great to be with you, Elaine.
So you recently said that you have seen massive enthusiasm for the Democratic candidates after speaking at the University of Georgia a few weeks ago. Now, early and mail-in voting data in Georgia compiled by the U.S. Elections Project shows around a quarter of the state's 18 to 24-year-old voters and 1/5 of Georgia voters aged 25 to 34 have cast a ballot so far. That is the lowest number for any age group. What do you make of those numbers?
Well, whether it's a runoff election or a general election, when you compare the turnout of 18 to 24-year-olds versus other age groups, it's generally true. It's been true very, very long time and across elections that they have a lower turnout rate. However, what we are seeing in this runoff is more enthusiasm among 18 to 24-year-olds than you find in most elections. And I think that bodes well for our Democratic candidates, for Ossoff and Warnock. When I went to the University of Georgia, what I felt there was a lot of enthusiasm. And then just generally what you could tell among young people, among, everybody, older folks, was people understand what the stakes are. They know that if Mitch McConnell has the keys to the Senate for another term, that nothing is going to get done. In this desperate time of need where so many people are on the brink of eviction, where a lot of folks still don't have good access to health care, where people need more than just a $600 check, they need more aid than that. That's not going to get done either. So there's a lot of enthusiasm and an understanding about the importance of voting in these Senate runoffs.
Well, for Latino turnout, just 24.2% of Hispanic voters in Georgia have cast an earlier mail-in ballot, the lowest of any demographic in the state. Why do you think that number is not higher at this point, and what do you think can be done to boost that turnout on Election Day?
Fortunately, both of these campaigns of Reverend Warnock and of Jon Ossoff have invested spectacularly in outreach to diverse communities within the state of Georgia. And, that's quite a story in and of itself, how diverse Georgia has become over the years. Of course, it has long had a large African-American population, but in the last 15, 20 years, the Latino population has grown a lot. The AAPI community has grown a lot. And all of that together has been powering victories at the county level and, of course, in November, gave Joe Biden and Kamala Harris the 16 electoral votes. So the Latino community has increased its participation. Of course, there's still work to do, but both of these campaigns have put a lot of effort and a lot of resources into pulling voters out. And I'm confident that we're going to see the results of that when all of the votes are tallied after the polls close tomorrow.
You talk about still have work to do. Well, we know Democrats had that strength in the general election with Latino voters in many urban areas, but struggled in some of those rural areas. So I wonder, how have you seen the candidates adjust their campaigns in these closing days to make sure that those voters know that they are seen and heard?
Well, it's been amazing. I don't know where they find the energy, but both of these candidates, Reverend Warnock and Jon Ossoff, have been everywhere in that state. I mean, they have been running 24/7 campaigns and also using surrogates and a large campaign staff. They've hired hundreds of folks to do all types of campaigning to get into these communities and let people know that they needed to vote early. And now, if they haven't voted early, that tomorrow on Election Day is the last chance to vote. So what I expect is that we actually are going to see a good, healthy turnout, not only in the Latino community, but across diverse communities for these Democratic candidates. Something like we saw in the general election there in Georgia a couple of months ago. And we also saw in places like Arizona that also flipped from red to blue in 2020.
Well, Republicans David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler have canvassed in majority Latino areas and run several Spanish language ads. Do you have concerns about their ability to appeal to some Latino voters?
I think that their appeal is going to fall very flat because they've held up assistance for families that need it. They have been lockstep with Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell, basically serving their very wealthy friends and benefiting corporations with huge tax breaks, being against expanding access to health care in this country, against making better investments in educational opportunity. So many of the issues that are really at the heart of what the Latino community cares about and follows. And so they can put all the ads they want on Spanish language TV and radio. I don't think it's going to make much difference. On the other hand, Jon Ossoff and Reverend Warnock have a vision for the future of our country that very much appeals to the Latino community, and they've put resources behind it. They've had more resources. They've had, I think, a stronger commitment, and they actually have a better argument to make. So I'm confident that that's going to resonate and that the Latino community is going to come out in a big way for these two Democratic candidates.
I also want to ask you about one of the central issues of this campaign, the coronavirus. Data analyzed by the Associated Press actually shows that minority-owned businesses waited months longer than white-owned ones to get paycheck protection loans. So as a former Housing and Urban Development Secretary, what would you like to see the incoming Biden administration do to address this?
Well, Elaine, you're right. What I heard there on the ground in Georgia when I was there about 3 weeks ago, what I've seen here in Texas is that so many small businesses across the board, but particularly businesses owned by people of color, did not have meaningful access to those PPP loans. And because of that, many more of them have been shuttered or operating at 30% capacity, 50% capacity of what they otherwise would have been able to. So many people are still out of work because that program, I don't think, was as robust as it could have been, and it wasn't administered nearly as effectively as it should have been. The good news is that President-elect Biden actually will surround himself with a team of people who understand how to do this effectively and to do it in a fair way that reaches all communities, whether we're talking about the Latino community or any other community. We can do this in a way that is fair, that is effective, that is swift, that keeps small businesses open, keeps workers working. So I look forward to a push in the next administration for a PPP program that actually meets the needs of small business owners, no matter who they are or where they are in our country.
Before we let you go, I have to ask you, what are your future political plans there in Texas?
These days I'm catching my breath from helping candidates throughout the 2020 cycle. Can't believe that the cycle is finally going to end tomorrow with these runoff elections. I don't have my eye on any particular office, and so I'm gonna keep using my voice to make a difference on the issues that I care about and vulnerable communities out there. And if the opportunity presents itself, the right opportunity in the years ahead, then I'll definitely consider that. But right now, I don't have anything that I'm aiming for.
I ask because, as you know, your name is among those when it comes to the gubernatorial race in 2022. There is much chatter. Of course, it's very early yet. But if you have any announcements to make, please feel free to make them here on Red and Blue, Secretary.
Thanks a lot, Elaine. I'll keep that in mind.
All right. All right. Former Democratic presidential candidate Julián Castro. Mr. Secretary, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.